welcome back to Real Time JC, Real Time Jesus with me, Stephanie, and today's episode 22. It is entitled Joseph's Trust, Facing and Fleeing from Adversity. But first, I wanted to take a really quick second to welcome all of those of you who are watching Real Time JC for the first time. Whether you found this by your Instagram, YouTube, or Facebook feed, a text message where somebody shared the link, or somebody gave you a call, or found you at church and said, hey, you've got to watch Real Time JC. Thank you. Thank you for pressing play. These episodes are filmed Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays directly following my date with Jesus right here from my bedroom here in Surprise, Arizona. These are things that God is literally in real time dealing with me. The things that I'm learning and the ways that He's developing me, the things that I'm growing in. And know that I am walking through very similar things that you're walking through. It's just my purpose is to film these episodes and to help encourage you through those times that we're journeying in together. And so I do hope that you feel encouraged. I do hope that you feel hope and feel more peaceful as you tackle your day. And just know that you are not alone, and that the God of heaven, the God of the universe, has tasked me with encouraging you. That's how much He cares for you. More than you'll ever even know, more than you'll ever even be able to comprehend. Okay, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and share with your friends, and let's dig in. All right, let's talk about adversity. Adversity. I'm sure all of you have walked through some type of adversity. In fact, I looked up the types of adversity on Google today, and I'm going to read that to you. I'm going to read first the definition. It says on Google, that the definition of adversity is a misfortune, a troubling situation, or hardship. And it goes on later to talk about 6 types of adversity that we may encounter in our lifetime: self-doubt, physical injuries or illness, rejection, poverty, losing a loved one, and struggling to succeed in your selected career. And I think any one of those any one of those types of adversity, I think literally any one of those we've all probably walked through in one way or another. Maybe there's one that we face more than the others, but I think if all of us were filming real-time JC episodes, we could film 100 for every single one type of those 6 types of adversity. I think sometimes we feel, and I know I'm saying we, but I should say I feel like adversity is always a thing with me. I'm always walking through adversity. I think the enemy is always trying to discourage me and cause defeat in me, and literal, like, not physical death, but maybe emotional death, mental death, spiritual death. He comes at me from every angle. And I know that I'm not alone in that. I'm sure that you feel like that. He comes at you from every angle. I think that if you were to look at me and my life from the outside, and you would see, if you saw me at church, or you saw me in the grocery store, or you saw me at one of the coffee shops in town, you would see a smile on my face and life and joy in my heart. That is not because I don't face adversity. That is because I have faced a lot of adversity, and God has seen me through that. And I've learned to find joy in the midst of that, and freedom in the midst of that. That is not without tears. That is not without feeling hurt and pain and sorrow. It's just finding the joy amidst that, and facing that, and then fleeing from the adversity to the high places with God. And that's really what we're going to talk about today. God led me to the story of Joseph, the foster father of Jesus, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, Jesus. What an honor it must have been for Joseph to be the foster father on this earth, his earthly father, the earthly father of the Messiah. Like, it gives me chills just thinking about once he comprehended and it just sunk in wow, what an honor. It doesn't talk about Joseph very much in the Bible other than who he was. He was from the house of David, just like Mary. It talks about one of the prophecies was that the Messiah would come from the lineage of David, from the house of David, and both Mary and Joseph, how cool is that, were from the house of David. It also talks about how Joseph was a carpenter, and so that he worked with his hands, how Jesus was a carpenter's son. So we assume that Jesus was also a carpenter. That carpenters in that day and age, they repaired furniture, built furniture, repaired plows, carts. They maybe even helped build homes with the stone and mortar. So we know that. It talks about how Joseph and Mary, they made or offered the least expensive sacrifices at the temple. So we can assume from that they didn't have a lot. They didn't have a lot of money, that they were probably poor. And so we can assume that Jesus was birthed into a very humble, poor, of little means home. And we can also assume that Joseph was a righteous man. It actually says that in Matthew 1:19, that he was a righteous man, which means he respected the Jewish laws and that he sought to obey them. And not only did he want, he wasn't obligated to obey them. He sought to obey them. He wanted to obey them. It was his desire to please God. And that spoke a lot to Joseph's character. He wanted to do the right thing. He was a man of integrity. He was a man of character. In fact, it really speaks to his character because Mary's parents wanted Joseph. They gave Mary to Joseph in the betrothal ceremony. She was probably in her mid-teens, so she's very young. So it spoke to Joseph's character when they consented to her entering to that engagement with him, being that he was a little bit older than Mary. Again, that was a beautiful thing. Mary was a woman after God's heart. She walked closely with God. And it also spoke to Joseph's character in that he desired to be married to a spiritual woman like Mary. So during the year of engagement, they were looked on as husband and wife. So that's very, very different than what it is in our day and age, where when you're engaged, you're looked on as just engaged. You're fiancés together. At any given moment, you could break off your engagement. You wouldn't have to fill out any paperwork, nothing. In that day and age, you would have to get divorced to break off an engagement. It was the only way to break off an engagement was to get divorced. It was a little bit different. So by the time that Gabriel came to Mary, Joseph and Mary were already betrothed. They were already engaged. So the only way they could break that engagement off were to get a divorce. Now, keep in mind, Joseph was a righteous man in a good way. He had character. He sought to obey God. So when he heard of Mary's pregnancy by Mary's own tongue, he was like, what? What? That's not possible. That's not possible. And in fact, can you imagine the conversation they may have had together of Mary coming to Joseph? They're already considered husband and wife, saying that she's pregnant. Number one, that would have already been red flag to Joseph. It could have been his mind could have gone to many things like Mary's cheated on me. Mary's been taken advantage of by a Roman soldier. That could have happened in that day and age because of the oppression the Hebrews were under by the Romans. Imagine that conversation. Joseph could have not believed Mary at all. And actually he didn't. He didn't at first. He didn't believe Mary. And he was probably, with all of the knowledge that he knew of the Jewish law, he was probably thinking, well, okay, wow, I'm just shocked. Mary's probably cheated on me. Or maybe he thought she was crazy. How could anyone be pregnant with the Messiah? This is ridiculous. So I am certain that all of the crazy things that any human would be thinking about was going through Joseph's mind. When he obeyed God and believed was when the angel came to him in a dream. Now, we're going to fast forward. The angel came to Joseph in a dream and explained that Mary was indeed pregnant with the Messiah. The Holy Spirit came upon her and she was pregnant. And yes, she was a virgin. And yes, she was still a virgin. And that Mary was going to carry and give birth to the Son, and that his name would be Jesus, and all of the beautiful things. Joseph believed. So now we walk into a massive amount of adversity. Joseph and Mary became the talk of the town. All of the gossips, they were misunderstood. I'm certain of it. Imagine all that went on during that time. Gosh, you guys, I can't even imagine the slander, the questioning, all of the things that Joseph had to walk through as being the man of the house, the one who provided, the one who was protecting. Then fast forward a little bit further. After Jesus was born, he was born in a manger. Would you want your son born in a cave with dirty animals all around you, stinky and stuff like that? No man would want their son, the Messiah, to be born but in this cave. But yet Joseph faced that adversity and he continued to walk through it with Mary by his side, knowing God's plan for his earthly son. Wow, it gives me chills just thinking about that. Now continue down that story, all of the adversity he faced when the wise men came and they explained the plan that Herod had to kill Jesus. Can you imagine being told there's somebody out here who is going to kill your child, who wants to kill your child? You've got to go. You've got to go. And so he had to flee. He had to flee that adversity to a country that was safe. And that's really where the story ends, other than we know that Joseph did eventually bring his family back to Nazareth. And then Jesus grew up. And we don't hear much about Joseph anymore. All of that adversity. But one thing he did do, now let's talk about this. It's in the title, Facing and Fleeing. He faced the adversity and then he fled. So now I wanted to bring you back to the Habbakuk angle. But first, before we do that, I wanted to share with you a little bit about my adversity. Guys, 2023 has been a crazy amount of adversity for me. Last year, I walked through a divorce. Of course, that brings adversity. Maybe diversity, but adversity. Walking into the things that you go through when you're walking through that, what are people going to think? What, being a Christ follower, people don't get divorced. There's going to be friendships maybe I'll lose, or the number of things that you think about when you're walking through a divorce, being a Christ follower is unbelievable. But God brought me through that. He brought me through that. He helped me face it. And then I fled to the mountain with him. Immersed in God. More adversity came through just job things and provisional things, financial things. I'm just thinking through all of these things and more adversity. Just so much adversity this year. And then yesterday something happened, a circumstance happened where more adversity happened. And I was so discouraged, you guys. Yesterday I was living in this discouragement and felt defeat. And so this morning I was processing in real time. I was processing all of this. And God led me to 2 Samuel. And I'll tell you how he did it too, which is totally real-time Jesus. I, as you guys know, I have a journal. And every day I write in my freedom day and I write the day. And I've been doing that every day for 200 and some days. Today I wrote Freedom FD, which is short for Freedom. Freedom Day, page 280, I believe it was, or 281. I was like, wait a second. I wrote page 281. Why is that? Page 281. I almost crossed it out and I went, no, 281. I'm going to go to my devotion, 281. Nope, it's not. There's no 281 in that. Okay, this other devotional I read. Nope, there's no 281 in that. I go to page 281 in my Bible because I don't think anything happens by just coincidence. There is a reason why my brain just subconsciously wrote page. I went to page 281, and what is it talking about? It's talking about when David was fleeing from Absalom. And this is the exact verse God brought me to. And you cannot plan these things, guys. In 2 Samuel 15, verse 30, page 281. But David continued up the Mount of Olives, weeping as he went. His head was covered and he was barefoot. All the people with him covered their heads too and were weeping as they went up. God was speaking to me in this moment as I was I wasn't weeping, but I was really processing through this time, and I was coming to a point of tears. He brought me to this, and he reminded me that King David himself was literally fleeing his son Absalom from a conspiracy to take over the throne. His own son, fleeing from this so that he wouldn't be murdered, and was fleeing up a mountain weeping, up the mountain. Oh my gosh, you guys. I mean, how I couldn't even like comprehend all of this. It was just like, wow, God is showing me something right now. He's showing me I needed to flee to him up the mountain. Then, oh my gosh, you guys, like literally this happens. I go to my Be Amazed book, in this book that I'm reading my commentary in. And I'm going through the words of Habbakuk, the book of Habbakuk. And what God was showing me today, he was talking about Habbakuk and how after he realized that God, like he was trusting in God, even though Israel was going to be going into a time of destruction, and that God knew, and he was allowing this destruction to help bring them back into knowing him and trusting him. It says, Habakkuk began to bound up the mountain like a deer. Because of his faith in the Lord, he was able to stand and be as sure-footed as a deer. He was able to run swiftly and go higher than he'd ever gone before. This is the one reason that why the Lord permits us to go through trials. You guys, they can draw us nearer to him and lift us up above the circumstances so that we can walk on the heights with him. God made us for the heights, you guys. God made us for the heights. If he allows us to go up, if he allows us to go into the valley, it's so that we might wait on him and mount up with eagle's wings, like it says in Isaiah 40, 30 through 31. This is what David experienced when he was being chased by his enemies. Right there. It's okay, literally it says this. This is what David experienced. It says this word for word in my devotional, and God had just led me to that verse. I mean, you can't even plan these things. I'm going to leave you with this. A couple things. The great British expositor G. Campbell Morgan said, "Our joy is in proportion to our trust. Our trust is in proportion to our knowledge of God." How beautiful is that? I'm going to say that again. Our joy is in proportion to our trust, and our trust is in proportion to our knowledge of God. Habakkuk teaches us to face our doubts and our questions honestly. I brought that discouragement and that adversity to God today. I brought them humbly to the Lord. Habakkuk brought them humbly to the Lord. David fled up to the mountain to be with God in the face of adversity. Habakkuk waited for the Lord to teach him. I waited for God to teach me. David continues to wait on God, and God continues to teach him. And then you worship him no matter how we feel or what we see. God doesn't always change our circumstances. that he can change us to meet those circumstances. And that's what it means to live by faith. That's what it means. You are going to face adversity, you guys. You will. You will face adversity, but you are a big, huge, humongous threat to the enemy. And that is also a reason why you're facing it. God works in all ways, obviously. But just remember that when you are facing that adversity, because you are a threat, he won't always change the circumstances, but he can change us to meet those circumstances. All right. I will see you next time for Real Time JC episode 23. Have a good day. Bye, guys.